This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, Democrats blinked, so said Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah yesterday with Wolf.
I think that the fact that they're voting in favor of this proposal that they had rejected a few days ago is sort of evidence that they blinked.
I think that's a fair statement. Sarah Sanders saying on the issue of DACA, DACA recipients should be storming Capitol Hill and directing their ire at Democrats.
John, there are a lot of dreamers in this country who are sort of living on pins and needles, not knowing what their fate is and has in store for them. What is this White House's message to that population of people?
I think that they should storm Capitol Hill and protest there because that is the place that has held up this discussion. Democrats are the one that shut this discussion down by forcing a government shutdown, by being unwilling to fund the government. We lost 4 days over this process of the conversation that should have been focused on immigration reform, fighting over this CR. If they had been part of the solution instead of part of the problem, then I think we would have already been further down the road in our negotiations on that package, and hopefully we won't have problems like that in the future.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by our friend John Fund, who is a columnist for National Review. He's got a piece that suggests Democrats will regret launching the shutdown over immigration policy. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So why are Dems going to regret what they've done?
Well, you don't start a fight that you don't have an exit strategy for. And what happened was they presumed that since every other shutdown in recent memory, the Republicans had been blamed for it, that the same would apply here. I think they forgot a couple of things. One is that President Trump is, shall we say, more resolute and, in this case, more clever than they expected. Remember, he stayed out of the public eye for 2 days, so the issue wasn't about him, wasn't about the things he was saying that were outrageous or anything like that. In fact, the Democrats were so worried that he was staying out of the public eye, they started taunting him, saying, "Where's the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal? The greatest deal maker in history. He's not at the table. He's not calling us." That was a very smart strategy on the president's part.
Yeah, he exercised great self-restraint.
And rare self-restraint, yes. I might add, yes. The second thing that happened was the Democrats were under enormous pressure from their liberal base to fight for the Dreamers. And they picked the wrong fight because while the Dreamers are sympathetic, about 70% of Americans want them to stay, they're not so sympathetic that they want to shut down the federal government for them. And that mismatch of priorities, I think, eventually was wearing on the Democrats because people were asking, this is the hill you're going to die on? And the third thing that happened was very simply, the longer that we discuss immigration, the longer that people talk not just about the Dreamers, but about chain migration and visa lotteries and all of the other bizarre quirks of our immigration system, which make our legal immigration system very unwieldy and unfair. The longer that went on, the longer more and more Americans actually figured out what chain migration is, which is that it means that family reunification makes up 14 out of 15 immigrants to this country. Skills and qualification, 1 out of 15 immigrants come in on skills and qualification. They were going to turn against the Democratic position.
So, Mitch McConnell made a promise not only to the Republicans, to the Democrats, but to all of Americans. Is he going to be able to deliver on that promise?
Well, that there's going to be a vote on the Dreamers? Yeah, of course. The Senate, that's what the Senate should do. That's the Senate's job. Now, is there going to be a deal on Dreamers that is going to pass into law? That's up to what the art of compromise is all about. And the Democrats are going to have to figure out a way to make sure that amendments on chain migration and visa lotteries and the wall funding don't end up on that bill. That'll be a challenge. But at least the government isn't shut down, and you're not literally playing with people's lives and the paychecks of the military and others based on an argument over 700,000 people who came here as kids as illegal aliens.
It seems to me, though, this is getting to the point where it's fairly clear that the central issue and probably sticking point is going to be altering chain migration because, you've got El Gaito, Luis Gutierrez out there saying, I'll build the wall myself if you get permanent status for DACA designees. So they'll do something, it seems. The Democrats are amenable to do something in terms of funding border security. But when it comes to, and maybe manipulating the diversity visa lottery too, but when it comes to chain migration, it seems like they're really going to have to give. Otherwise, Tom Cotton and David Perdue and a number of others aren't going along with a deal on DACA.
Yeah, and in fact, I think that your listeners should understand that Gutierrez's willingness to give ground on the wall indicates that it's more symbolic than it is real. The wall its funding would be 8 or 9 years, and you could always trip it up later on. What he's really digging his heels in is any kind of change to the chain migration issue. Look, I'm for immigration. I've written lots of articles about how immigration helps this country. However, unlike Canada and Australia and many other countries, our system simply doesn't work. The average immigrant legal immigrant from Mexico or India brings with them over time 6.6 other people. Now, I'm all for family unification, brothers who are minor children, spouses, mothers and fathers, but not, cousin Bagwadi. That's a separate thing, and they need to go through the normal processes to come to this country.
Well, how do they do it in Canada?
Well, Canada has a system, along with many other countries, which is skills-based and education-based. They give you a point for, every educational achievement you have. They give you points for the skills you have. They give you points, yes, for family unification, but that's only a part of the mix. And if you have a high score, and perhaps in addition you bring in some money to invest in the country or to start a business, if you get a high enough score, you get a residency permit, and that puts you on a path which ultimately will allow you to become a Canadian citizen.
One of the things that's interesting in this Harvard-Harris poll that has come out about Americans' attitudes toward immigration, as you mentioned, they're favorable to some kind of permanent status for the DACA designees. But boy, they're not for almost 4 in 5 are not for our continued level of legal immigration at a little north of 1 million people a year. That most people want it capped at 500,000 people a year, and some even less. And it seems to me one of the things that the lawlessness of our system has produced is less charitable dispositions of the American people towards legal immigration. It's this unintended negative consequence of not running a system that people can rely on, not doing basic things like deporting convicted criminals, and so they don't have any confidence in the system, so they don't want to see more even legal immigration.
Right, and we also have, I think, an unfortunate alliance of both the right and the left against a workable work visa program, both for skilled and for unskilled workers. We solved this problem in the 1950s once. Dwight Eisenhower expanded the Bracero program dramatically. It allowed people to come into this country for a limited period of time on a work visa program because there were all kinds of needs the country had. It was a growing economy, just like ours is today. But they didn't necessarily stay forever. The vast majority of them went back. And the Bracero program took the number of arrests at the border from 1 million in 1953 down to 30,000. And eventually labor unions were very upset with the work visa program, and they got President Lyndon Johnson to abrogate it and end it. But ever since then, because we haven't had a real work visa program in this country, people have one of two choices. They can either figure out a way to come in as, cousin Bagwadi does right now, as family unification, or they cross the border illegally. There's no third way. And we need to create a third way, a work visa program.
Wow. But most of the people that are here illegally, I think it's about 40% have overstayed their visas. So do you think building the wall is really going to be that effective, or is it more of a symbol, a promise of what President Trump told the people out on the campaign trail?
Well, it is fulfilling a campaign promise, but, my brother was deputy chief of police in Tucson, Arizona for many years. He knows the border very well. We probably are going to have to recognize that the border is 2,000 miles long. It doesn't require a physical wall everywhere. Drones and other things can handle it. And frankly, we also have to address the fact that there's a limit to how much you can do with enforcement only. If we had a work visa program, we would regularize the flow across the border, and we could focus on the criminals. Right now, because we don't have a workable work visa program, basically people cross over and they can't go back and forth because, of course, they don't have a work visa. They're illegal. And that means more of them stay here. So I think that the whole system is designed to create chaos, and we need to make order out of chaos. And that's by saying, look, we're going to have people crossing the border for work. Let's have it on legal terms, not illegal terms.
I think I want to let Cousin Bakwadi stay just because I like his name.
Is it a second or third cousin?
I don't know. He is John Fund. He's columnist for National Review. His most recent piece at nationalreview.com. Dems will regret launching shutdown over immigration policy. John, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.